thanks for coming to this session. Like 4 o'clock on the last day. Good to see you guys here. I think half of my team from the Singapore office, so thanks. Thanks for that, guys. But I'm really looking forward to it. We've got some great panelists who I'll introduce in a second. But we're going to talk about this, how to talk to brand tribes on dark social and beyond. Who's heard of dark social? Well, that's good. Yeah, all the panel, good. What about brand tribes? Yeah, okay, good. Maybe a quarter of the room. So look, brand tribes, if you think about, what I'll do is I'll just define brand tribes and dark social before we get into it. So it's a little bit different to just fans and advocates. It's a little bit deeper. Brand tribes are really passionate about their brand, product, or surface. And in a brand tribe, they not only follow the brand and share with the brand, but they also share with each other. And it's about the way that they feel about the brand and the way that the community and those other people that they share stuff with feel about the brand as well. So when we look from a Rhythm One perspective, when we look at how can you tell someone's within a brand tribe, how can you tell they're that passionate follower? It's not just about signing up to a loyalty program or a membership. It's a lot deeper than that. And we see from a Rhythm One perspective the sharing of content as a really powerful indicator of a consumer being part of a brand tribe. So there's many ways that consumers can share content, including dark social. So when we talk about dark social, we're talking about intimate social networks. We're talking about sharing via email, IM, WhatsApp, Line, WeChat, and those type of channels. So we're gonna dive into it a little bit today, and if we've got time, we'll open up to the floor as well. We'd love to answer any questions. But let me introduce the panel. I'll let them walk up, and then I'll let them actually tell you a little bit about themselves. Why don't we start with Anna? So give her a round of applause, everybody. Come on, Slate. We'll get everyone up. Alana, would you like to come up? Thank you. Yes. Watch the step. Watch the step, Alana. You okay? Okay, Alana's 8 months pregnant. We got Mike. Come on, Mike. And Charlotte. Come on up, Charlotte. So, and we're gonna start with you. Should there be a photo up here? Can we go back to the photos?
I'm here.
Yeah. You don't need the photos. Here's Anna. Anna, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Gosh, I hate talking about myself. I'm from San Francisco originally. Actually grew up in Florida, but I moved here in 2009 after one of the startups that I was with in San Francisco got acquired by one of the major global enterprise software companies, CA. And they asked me to come here to run the cloud business and also to grow the region for them. And then subsequently, I moved to Japan for a couple of years. And my entire career has been in tech. I started in '97 in Silicon Valley. For all of my career, it's always been an enterprise software space, selling to large companies, large B2C companies as well, and very complex systems. So I'm now here in Singapore, and I've only been in Perks for about 3 years. I took over a company that was not functioning well, and it was a very much a popular brand in Singapore only, and it was a B2C mobile loyalty app. And then when I came in, I transitioned the company and refounded it to be more full-fledged enterprise software. And so now it's serving all of the large and global banks, insurance companies, telcos, large retail brands and hospitality brands. So it's a complete shift out of the app business. And we still have the app in Singapore as a demo purpose, but our focus now is moving into full-fledged enterprise.
Cool. Great to have you, Anna.
Thank you.
Charlotte, or Charlie, also pregnant, actually. So we've got two pregnant panelists, and there was another guy that was meant to be here. Jay Morgan was his name. his wife just had a child at 6 months. So there's something going on this panel. Good, Mike. Charlotte.
Yeah, hi, I'm Charlotte. I feel very boring compared to Anna. I've spent my entire career on media agency side, so I'm originally from England. You might be able to tell from the accent. Worked at Cara for many years in London, and then to MediaCom. I've now been at MediaCom for coming up to 8 years. Moved to Singapore about 2.5 years ago, and I'm a regional director, so I work across the whole of APAC. I run the Uber business, which is fun, and I'm also head of our new business, so I lead all of our business development and pitching across the region. So yeah, that's me.
Alana.
I'm Alana. I moved to Singapore about 5 years ago and to work at Mindshare for about a year. I then moved to Skyscanner before starting my own business here about 2 years ago. I fell pregnant and then found out I was only allowed to have 3 months maternity leave, which wasn't ideal for me. So I started my business 2 years ago, working with companies around the world, actually helping them with their marketing in general. I think a lot of people these days still use the term digital marketing, but really I think most people in this room would say that marketing, digital marketing, it's all the one thing. So I work with some great companies, a food security business out of Dubai, a business called the Nomadic School of Business, where I'm lucky enough to work with real tribes from Mongolia, Africa and Aborigines in Australia, and then various small businesses here. So Adam and I have known each other for quite a few years, back in the day in media in Australia, which we were reminiscing about that before, ski trips in Jindabyne. But yeah, that's me. I'm a mum and about to be a mum again, so hopefully not here.
No, Dr. Steve.
Brilliant.
And not anymore, just Professor. And last but not least, Mike.
Hi, thanks for the intro. My name's Mike Rich. I've been in the media and advertising business for 20 plus years. I won't be too specific, but it's been a long and winding road. I spent a number of years working client side in Europe in the kind of late 90s, and then I joined WPP. Moved with WPP to Singapore in 2004, where we launched Group M's branded content business. Spent about 10 years building that business across Asia Pac. I then moved to Publicis, where we launched a global content financing and distribution business out of London for a couple of years. And then I've recently moved back to Asia, to Hong Kong, to join Fox Network Groups, where I lead the sales and content partnerships division for Asia Pac and Middle East.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Well, let's get into it. So, thank you. I'm going to start with Alana. Is tribe just another buzzword?
I think if you look at, so like I said before, I'm lucky enough to work with actual physical tribes, so herdsmen in Mongolia and tribal elders out of Africa and elders out of Aboriginal tribes in Australia. And I think if you look at the physical nature of tribes, it would be pretty disrespectful to say that it is a fad. I think traditionally tribes have a hierarchy, there's strong loyalty, and there's a strong leadership that goes along with tribes. In a brand and marketing sense, I think, if anything, fans and advocates are easily bought nowadays. So if you look at Instagram, for example, any new up-and-coming brand or any new up-and-coming blogger can go out there and buy 30, 40, 50, 150,000 fans. Could be real, could be not, we don't know. But the essence of a tribe, I think, is that there's some substance to it, and there's a fierce loyalty. And we're going to talk a little bit about brands that we think have done well in this space. However, I think for a brand to do well in this space is difficult. I think it's more about the brand advocate that the tribe is following, if that makes sense. So they're in essence like a real tribe. There's a leader that the tribe is following, and I think that's why I don't necessarily think it's a fad. I think it's actually a mecca for brands, and I think it's very hard for a brand to achieve that tribalistic, that tribalistic way.
Cool.
Yeah, rather than buying their fans, which anyone can do. I've seen it.
So, Anna, your business does a fair bit like loyalty. What's your view? Is it a fad? Is it a buzzword? How do you look at it?
I agree with Alana in the way where there has to be a leader, and often it's driven by a leader. So even in our own social circles, if we talk about tribes, we have so many dark social tribes that are under the cover, whether it's female groups of interest or any commonalities that we have. I belong to probably about 40 to 50 different social tribes myself. And not even talking about my customers, my enterprise clients who have hundreds of thousands of different brands themselves, and they're trying to market to different tribes. Myself, my own personal experience have been, it's a trend. Oftentimes we talk about something and then you forget it, and then somebody else leads another topic or another fad or trend, and then you tend to follow. Someone who starts the movement, and then you actually follow. So I've never seen there is a group that actually talk about something and go head to head together. It's always been somebody leading. There has to be a tribal head. Yeah.
So were you saying it's a fad? Do you think it's a fad?
It's a fad.
Okay.
Oh.
Loyalty's dead.
Loyalty's
Loyalty
dead.
is
Wow.
dead.
Wow.
There is no loyalty.
Jeez.
Yeah.
No good for any of us that are married or have partners. So I've got an issue with my mic. Is that better? It's not magic mic. We good? Okay. Thank you. It's going to be odd. I'm just going to have to hold my chest like this. Okay. So what about across? What about across different regions? Can you? I mean.
Oh,
do
they're
you see
so different.
Yeah.
Yeah. The products that
see.
we, so me being an American and Asian living here too, there are certain tribes of my own circle and also my client's circle. We actually market differently from region to region. That's why coalitions, if you're talking about loyalty coalitions, it doesn't really work. If trying to move a Passion or NTUC Link or Flybys to Asia and NTUC to Thailand, it's a different way to market these different loyalty programs.
Sure.
And so in itself, these coalitions is not sustainable outside of the territory. And so you have to create a new way of engaging, localize it, and then human behavior also evolves so quickly and so often. And that's why we leverage a lot of AI capabilities into our own the platform. And so recommending the right products to the right consumers at the right time is relevant because we ourselves don't stay loyal to many products ourselves. So our behavior changes based on climate, based on social economics, based on religion, based on everything around us. So we often evolve as humans as well.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's a fad.
Okay. Well, it's not for those Hello Kitty fans out there. Chris Parker's one of those. Let's talk about building and nurturing tribes. Mike, how important is it? What can be done about building, growing, nurturing tribes?
Yeah. Look, I mean, looking at it from, I guess, from Fox's perspective, as a relatively traditional or a big core component of our business, relatively traditional linear television network business. Even before I talk about maybe our advertising brand partners, we tend to look at our own product increasingly from a tribal perspective. Because the reality for us is that if we don't have strong brand tribe following for our own product, our ability to be able to monetize those brands for our advertising partners is going to be non-existent before we start. So we've gone through quite a significant exercise over the last 12, 18 months, re-looking at how we build audiences. And we don't use the word tribe, but we tend to use the word advocates a little bit more. But for me, I think it's broadly the same thing. How do you build strong levels of engagement within our audience network. And we talk about sort of 3 macro tribes. We have sports tribes, we have entertainment tribes, and then we have an enormous National Geographic tribe. And then within that, we look at how we can build out micro tribes. So we know that there are people that are big fans of our brand and want to engage with us in conversations about sport. That tends to be driven by the broadcast component of our televisual product. But then within different genres of sport, within different programming, we can use digital distribution to build out those kind of micro tribes. And that's when we start to bring in our brand partnerships to leverage off that level of engagement. Same for general entertainment. You know, we see significant amount of success with products like Walking Dead in this territory, and how tribalistic the zombie fans can be, which can get a little bit creepy at times.
And zombie parties, that sort of thing?
Not personally, but we do finance a few of them, yes. And in fact, for the latest season launch, we saw some stats that said that escape rooms, which is the kind of latest trend in terms of a kind of fun engagement experience, had sold out on the week of the launch for Walking Dead, right?
Hands up, who's got an escape room at home? Anyone in the crowd? No? Okay.
I'm now thinking about it.
Okay. Okay, I'm a little bit scared. Charlie, do you have anything to add there from?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a media agency perspective, whether or not it's a fad or it's not a fad, it's something that we do talk to our clients a lot about, because in this day and age when markets are highly competitive and many products are highly commoditized, you have to find a way to cut through all that clutter. And it's not enough just to kind of stick an ad out there and hope that people go and buy your product. You know, you need to try and develop that deeper level of connection. And if you're successful, and like Alana said, it's very hard, but if you're successful at building that really loyal following of consumers, not only do you kind of build that firm memory structure, which means that your brand is going to be the first one that they go to rather than getting swayed by the competition. But it also means you're doing yourself a favour from a kind of ad perspective, because you're not relying so heavily on paid media, because they're going to do it for you on your behalf. So if you can create this tribe, then the less you have to spend on trying to cut through the clutter, because you've got people who are doing your job for you. So we do think it's something that's quite important for our clients to try and develop.
Fad or not a fad? Are you with Anna, or are you against?
I think the word tribes is a little bit faddy potentially, but what we're really talking about is that kind of level of really deep loyalty, which I don't think is a fad. I think that's something that is very much what brands should be striving to achieve.
So maybe the word is a bit buzzy, is a fad, but the deeper connection
the
with
meaning,
consumers is important. Is that what I'm hearing, potentially?
I think so.
Maybe I'm just spinning that because it works for me. Who's doing it well, Alana?
Look, I think just back to Anna's point around loyalty, I think I agree that there are certain brands out there where, you know, especially in Asia, loyalty could be considered dead. For example, you know, on a Sunday night when we're ordering Deliveroo, Uber Eats or Food Panda, you know, I don't really mind who I'm buying my takeaway Thai from, but as long as they can get it to me the quickest. So I'm not loyal in that respect. But then I do think that there are brands, especially in the sporting space. I think brands like Garmin, Fitbit, Nike, Under Armour, especially in Singapore and Asia in general, really create that tribalistic nature. And I guess that sport in general does that. But even my husband and I have a Fitbit. He is a creative, and he loves the UI of the Fitbit app. He thinks it's amazing, but he would never switch from Garmin because that's his tribe. So he would rather stick to Garmin and stick to the Garmin app, even though he thinks it's a inferior product, because he wouldn't be caught dead in a Fitbit. As far as he's concerned, it's not serious enough for him. So if that's not tribalistic, then I'm not sure
Yeah.
what is. So yeah, I definitely think the sporting brands are doing it really well. I think Charlie agrees. to a
Yeah,
certain
we were
aspect.
talking about this earlier. So
Yeah.
I think Nike is one of the ones that immediately springs to mind,
Yeah.
and they've done a really good job at kind of creating this real tribal following of people that actually kind of it goes beyond the product. So obviously they might be buying the products, but actually it's much more than that. It's about the whole lifestyle and the running and the running club. And I saw a really cool execution, not in this region, but in Colombia actually, where they were trying to kind of ignite people behind this this movement that running should be made much more equalitarian rather than just being kind of quite male dominated in Colombia. And so they gave everyone magnetic ponytails to go and stick on like street signs to turn all of the little stick men into women. And that got a huge movement behind it, and people kind of believe in that and buy into something more than just the product. So yeah, I think that's quite easy to do in sport because it's a very easy kind of passion point. But
I think the best example I've ever seen of a tribe is when I was working for the Australian Rugby Union, and we drove into we were driving, I can't remember if it was Auckland or it must have been Auckland, and they had done a blackout. So the All Blacks had blacked out the city as they knew that the Australian Rugby Union were driving in to the city. So every single house was blacked out, the lights were blacked out. There were black banners all the way down the street as the Wallabies went to their hotel. So if that's not a tribe, I think that's a really great example.
Yeah, it's a great example
Yeah.
of a tribe. Mike, I'm gonna throw to you. So when you're talking to these various tribes on different platforms, do you need to think about it differently? I mean, I touched on dark social, so whether that's email or IM and WhatsApp versus broadcast media versus an event, how do you talk to them differently?
Yeah, look, talking regularly
Yeah.
is extremely important. Understanding that as human beings, we all have multiple touch points. I think there can often be a tendency within marketing and increasing pressure on limited marketing budgets that you focus all of your expenditure or your energy through one or a limited number of channels. Our view is that broadcast medium works in certain arenas, digital medium works extremely well, but we do a lot, particularly with National Geographic brand, across multiple different social media platforms, live events. So making sure that you understand that if you're going to continually engage with your tribe and sort of maintain that level of loyalty, that you need to talk to them via all of those different touch points, I think is critical. And I think just making sure, and I mean, it kind of depends what the brand is. I mean, I'll default a little bit to National Geographic because we've seen some extraordinary results with that brand over the last 18 months since Fox globally took over as the commercial partner for the brand. If you've got a clearly identified purpose for the brand that stands for something that is above and beyond a commercial proposition, that if you can communicate that well, that tends to resonate extremely well. So for us, with National Geographic, it's 130 years old, it's authentic, it's got integrity, and its purpose is about using science and exploration to change the planet.
Got it.
Now that as a proposition has seemed to have resonated extremely well, believe it or not, still in print medium with the magazine, on the broadcast platform, perhaps probably for a slightly older generation, but it has absolutely taken off in social media over the last 18 to 24 months. We've got 107 million Instagram followers globally. We've just surpassed the NBA as the #1 aggregated social media platform. So for us to build on that and communicate via different platforms is a huge opportunity, and we're getting, every level from kind of government partners to tourist boards to commercial brands wanting to be seen to be associated with a brand that has that level of integrity.
Charlotte, what about from a media agency, channel planning type of perspective? Is there some thought that goes around talking to the different or talking to these tribes through the different channels?
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously a lot of our time is spent kind of defining audiences and who they are, but I think quite often we get caught up in chasing like what's the newest source of growth and how can we grow the brand by reaching a brand new audience. And I think sometimes there's a danger of ignoring the really loyal fans that you already have. So it's about kind of finding that balance between who are the source of growth that can add additional people in, but who are the ones that are actually going to, like I spoke about earlier, do that job for you. And you know, we spend a lot of time talking about the entire kind of campaign ecosystem, and so how that works across, you know, kind of telling people from a paid media perspective and how that feeds into own channels. And you can use some of your tribes and your advocates as your owned assets if you do it right, to get them to kind of then talk about, you know, the brand purpose and the content and share stuff, and then that drives your earned media, and so it kind of all works together. So yeah, we very much kind of plan holistically for our clients to try and achieve that good mix.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, to the extent that certainly within our Fox Sports network, we have volunteer influencers that literally say, I'm not going to charge you for my service, but if I can work with you to localize some of the assets that we've got in markets around Southeast Asia. So we've got somewhere between 50 and 100 kind of volunteer influencers that just provide a service to their tribe off the back of some of the assets that we have.
I'll pick up on influencers. It seems to be something where there's a lot of kind of influencer marketing businesses out there, and this is for you, Alana, this question. So is there an intersection between kind of influencers and building tribes? You feel where does that sort of cross over?
Yeah, I think it's to the point where we were talking before around to have a really strong tribe. I think there needs to be a leader that the tribe is following. So rather than, sometimes that can be the brand, whether it be Garmin or Fitbit. But I think Airbnb does this really well in that they have discovered these really small influencers who are professionals in their own right. So, for example, there's a lady called Amelia Fullerton who is a photographer out of Byron Bay. She also has her own children's wear label. You probably don't know her, but I follow her because she was my wedding photographer. She is an influencer for Airbnb because of her photography work and also her following in her own right. She has about 150,000 Instagram followers. And so I think that, and then I would go and stay where Amelia has stayed because I value her recommendation. And I think that's where influencers and tribes intersect in that I'm part of Amelia's tribe, therefore I would follow Amelia's recommendation. So yeah, I think influencers can play a really strong role as long as they are genuine influencers and they have a genuine tribal following.
Got it.
Yeah.
Anna, do you think, I'm just going to keep going on this influencer piece just for a second. Influencers, is the tribal following of influencers fickle as well? People chop and change, or do you have a different view when it comes to influencers versus a brand, product or service?
I think influencers, in our definition, when we talk about consumer engagement 2.0, right? It's about your brand ambassadors. Most of the clients that we worked with, they don't even know who they are. So then they can't even engage them because they focus about 80% of their budget on acquisition and buying. So it's a vicious cycle where we've seen a lot of money being sunk into acquisition. Whereas if they had already millions of consumers in their portfolio, they have not really focused on that whole heavy engagement because their KPI has always been on driving adoption, driving net new customers. And then there's a new group here, the marketer, and a separate marketing team that actually focuses on activation, usage, engagement. And then now they have the hardest job because they have the lowest budget. Right, and so when you talk about brand ambassadors, this group that spends so much money on acquisition, focusing the new market, whereas only 50% of your public acquired customers really get activated and continue to maybe buy more than once, of your products and services. So where does the other 50% of your budget go? And so we've seen a trend of that, and that's why we've been working with these marketers. They don't know a lot of their existing users, where the tribes are, where the influence are, where the brand ambassadors are, and we're trying to help them find that through some AI intelligence. So a lot of it is just data. It's all the data they've acquired and trillions of data sets that they're not using correctly or even in real time. So then they can't even cross-sell and upsell the loyal customers that they've already have. And so we're trying to evolve out of that. And when was the last time any of you guys been surprised and delighted by one of your service providers? Never. Right? So I think the brands in itself has not they have not really gone that far yet. They're still focused on social media. Right. But direct to the consumer in a real-time way, they haven't figured it out yet.
So how are you helping them through, so you deal with a lot of big enterprise clients, how are you helping them through that engagement? How are you helping them through, engaging with their consumers, potential tribes, customers?
Well, I think if you talk about predictive behavior, there's also behavioral science, understanding what their buying behavior, what their likes, what their different patterns. They may not even buy anything, but they could even be your brand ambassador. They talked about it, they may not have made a transaction, and they already evangelized your products and services, but you don't know how to appreciate that person for evangelizing your products. So all of the data that we collect, we start to now engage in this closed loop network rather than a spammy advertising network. So we're starting to move a lot more away from ad tech because they're getting such bad rap. Not for any purposes, but recently there's a lot of big brands like Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan. They're exposing ad agencies and the whole display network where JP Morgan ran this whole study. I don't know if you guys actually followed. They hired an intern to figure out of 400,000 sites that they've actually invested in. The intern within a few days figured out that only 5,000 of them actually had any conversions. So 400,000 investment, they've realized that they've made no money only on 5,000 conversions. So that's why Procter & Gamble came out and said, I'm going to cut billions of dollars in with my agencies because it's a Ponzi scheme in itself. Wow. So a lot of exposure is coming out, and now who do you trust?
Ouch.
Okay. So with all of advertising is a Ponzi scheme?
That's what this is why brands are now losing confidence. You have to now leverage what's real. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And it's data.
Yeah. Yeah, it sits at the center. So let's talk about this Ponzi scheme. Hopefully not all of it's a Ponzi scheme. So how do you get a return on these tribes? So you build out a tribe. How do you track it? How do you then prove there's an end result which is a return? Charlotte, what's your view? Have you thought about it, modelling around it?
Yeah, it's a question that comes up from our clients in terms of money that they spent and what it's doing for them. Obviously, I think with tribes, it's about first off, it's going to take time. So you have to be prepared to invest that time in waiting for the return, because it's not going to be one of those things that's like a performance ad that you're going to stick it out and you're going to get immediate uplift. But I think it comes back to it sounds really basic, but it's about working out what it is you're trying to achieve and then making sure that you're measuring the right things for what you're trying to achieve. So when it comes to tribes, if you're going to invest in your tribes and that's something that you want to do, then you need to realize that the outcome that you want is deep engagement, loyal fans. That's going to take time, but you also need to measure that against those metrics. So you need to start measuring engagement metrics such as time spent with your content, the number of shares you get, the number of likes you get, the number of comments you get. And there's no point measuring that on clicks and kind of performance metrics. So it's about obviously balancing what you're measuring against what it is you're trying to achieve. And then, like I said before, it's kind of looking a bit creatively beyond just kind of the obvious in terms of if you're going to invest time and money and effort in kind of developing a loyal customer base, you then need to kind of spend the time understanding what that's doing for your brand beyond just the obvious metrics. So look at things like your brand health over time, look at things like the social chatter around it, look at the effect that it's having on your own channels and on your earned media. I mean, it's not going to be one of those things which has like a linear ROI, which is why I think a lot of marketers get put off, especially marketers who are used to working on acquisition and performance metrics. But it's just kind of making that mental switch, and it's a different ball game basically, and it's one that's going to take a bit more of a long return rather than an immediate return.
So from an attribution perspective, have you seen any sort of platforms that are kind of tracking it through to an action, whether that's either acquiring a new customer or retaining a high valuable customer? So you can take that sort of that mid or upper funnel activity, that engagement, the likes, the shares, and then track it all the way through to action.
Yeah, I mean, some of the more sophisticated clients will have their own kind of attribution models and algorithmic attribution models going on that allow them to do that. I mean, I don't think it's easy, and I think that for a lot of clients, that's kind of something that they might aspire to, and it's not something that they're immediately doing. It's kind of a frustration, I think, on both sides of the fence, so agency and clients, in terms of sometimes the lack of infrastructure that's set up to measure things in the right way. But I think it is possible. I don't think it's simple. I don't think it's as simple as spending $1 and seeing your exact return. But I think if you do think a bit creatively and work with some, moving beyond just like the last click attribution model, you should be able to figure it out and kind of definitely assign some value to what you're doing.
Okay, guys, I'm going to ask the panel sort of top 2 tips on building a tribe, and then I'm going to throw open to the floor for any questions. So think of some questions and who you want to stump on the panel. Mike, I'm going to start with you. Top two points on growing, engaging a tribe.
Top 2 for us, if it's at all possible, getting to a point where you can understand the effectiveness of your output. And we talk a lot about first degree of recommendation. So if you can get to a point where the members of your tribe, if they were asked the question about whatever the brand asset is that you want to get the feedback on, would they recommend it to their friend or family? Then that for us is a really important metric. And then particularly, I think one of the things for us with a brand with a purpose like National Geographic, be very clear that it's not always about what I say, but it's what I do. So if you can demonstrate what your brand stands for and demonstrate that clearly to the tribe, you focus on those things, the 2 things, I think you'll be off to a decent start.
Thank you. Alana, top 2?
What we do at the Nomadic School of Business is we talk about thinking about real tribes and how brands or companies can take on attributes of real tribes to create fierce loyalty or great leadership or advocacy. And so I think I'm thinking about what real tribes would do to create what you're looking to achieve or what you want your tribe to look like. And then I think we talk a lot about data and digital. I think 10, 12, 13 years ago, when I was beating down the doors of marketing managers and offline media planners trying to get some TV dollars, it was all about, you can only deliver me 500 clicks or, and now we're in this space of, we've got almost too much data. So I think going back to the human centered approach and maybe doing some customer-centric work might help, I think, grow your brand tribes a lot more, rather than just looking at the pure data of it all.
Got it.
Yeah.
The human part.
The
Charlotte.
human-centered part. Yeah.
I spoke about it just now, but I think give it time. I don't think it's one of those things which you can expect to be able to crack overnight. Like we're saying, it's something that's actually really difficult to do if you're going to really get that proper loyalty that you're looking for. So kind of give it time, be prepared to invest, be prepared to kind of measure everything, figure out what's working, what's not working. And then kind of linked to that, my other one would be listen to the tribe. So if you're going to spend all this time, and effort and money developing content that's specifically for a tribe, then make sure you actually listen to how it's received and make sure that you've got the right measurement and tracking in place to understand, is that content being well received, is it being shared, is the sentiment around it and around your brand correct and how you want it to be. So I think it's quite work intensive, but I think the work would pay off.
Anna, what are your thoughts? Top two.
I'm the only technology provider here, so it's hard for me to advise on any marketing pitch. But the top two, we've been seeing a lot of our customers asking for smarter engagement because they need auto segmentations. If you're thinking about most of the large enterprises, they have hired a team of data scientists. And most of these data scientists are, first of all, needle in a haystack to hire, right? They're hard to find. Most of them are just business analysts or data engineers. They're not real data scientists. So if you have about 100 of these guys sitting in some lab, crunching Excel spreadsheets and manipulating data and trying to figure out who to do the first level of recommendation, that in itself is already time intensive. What we're trying to do is work with these companies to build an AI in a box where they don't have to hire data scientists. Let the solution providers actually solve those problems for them. And we're able to, if you just upload a transactional table of records, let's say 10 million customers with buying behavior is all the way through this time frame with these kind of credit cards or with these kind of brands and products, we can actually manipulate that data over time and learn and be smarter to tell you that this person should be buying this product and should be delivered this offer and the highest conversion of for this group of users. As long as you just upload that table, we should be able to turn in, this is the group of users that you should sell Gucci to, and they would convert at the highest rate. You don't even need to do anything. And this is where actually AI heads to. Now you have this real-time dashboard and data that you see in front of you. That's where the human, the intelligence, the business analyst will come in and say, well, we can A/B test a few assumptions here. And let's now, if we're selling more high-end brands this month, let's see if we can, push more of these high-end brands. So there's a lot of this still A/B testing that needs to be done to actually prove your AI model. AI still is as much data that you feed. It won't get smarter if you don't feed data into it. So we need a lot of this data points, transactional records. That's why we integrate with the back end. And it's not all about AI. They're not going to take our jobs, but I think to help organizations build smarter models to give more relevance to consumers is what we're trying to strive for.
Okay. So we've got a bit of human stuff, we've got a bit of data and human infusion is kind of where we've landed. To the floor, any questions around building tribes? Any questions to the panel? Don't all put your hands up at once. You want to rush? Please. We've got a microphone there. Just if you don't mind your name, where you're from.
Remy from Gyro. So we're a B2B agency.
Okay.
So Anna, this might be for you because we've got similar views. But we've got a lot of clients that we work with that are moving from a B2C to a B2B model. And the challenge that they have is, I think tribes for us are absolutely relevant because you've got clients that are buying millions of dollars worth of software, for example, so they'll use that for years and years and years to come. How much do you think a B2C brand that's moving to B2B can actually leverage their B2C tribe? Because that's the challenge we have at the moment is, like an Intel, for example, is known as a B2C provider, but they have a challenge in targeting their B2B and building a tribe through that. So any thoughts, or anyone?
Yes, so it's a good question because we're asked by many banks to solve their B2B problems because they have so many enterprise clients, SME clients, and they want to know effectively how do they engage with them better, how to build more loyalty, because they can easily go from one bank to another, get better rates, right, on loans and different services and workshops and whatnot and advocacies. So what makes DBS better than UOB, better than OCBC or Citibank? To us, it's probably just marginal commodity. We view them as commodity these days. So now if you understand what your merchants' behaviors are, what services they're buying from you, how well engaged are they? So you have to marry content and the programs against some of the data points that you have already collected. And then we can also build that predictive model for you to engage, whether it's appreciating them through different ways or giving them a special attention workshop, seminar just for that. So without the data that's used in real time, we can't really make any kind of judgment. So we're now trying to solve some of these problems for the banks, for their ecosystem. So similar to Intel or Dell, they have so many B2B clients. Manufacturing, yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions out there? Gary Fung? No questions? Normally got a lot of questions. Guys, thank you so much. Now, if you found any of this interesting and you're keen to learn more about how to build brand tribes, go here to rhythm1.com/tribes SEA. Download the Tribes Guide. It's great reading. I'm getting copies for all my family for Christmas. But I highly recommend it. If you found any of this interesting, please go there now, later, and download it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.